Welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, the show where we talk about all the crazy stupid stuff that people do in marketing. I always feel like I try to get through a sentence every time I say it, and it's still funny because unfortunately, there's still a lot of people doing crazy stupid stuff when it comes to marketing. And this is the show where we try to reveal all of those things so you do not have to do crazy stupid marketing things in case you don't happen to know that the things that you're doing are crazy and stupid. So quick definitions for all of you who might be new to the show, or maybe you're just want a quick reminder on what crazy and stupid mean on the Crazy and Stupid Marketing Show. Crazy being the things we do over and over and over, expecting a different result. Definition of insanity. And stupid being the things that you do because someone else told you that you should, but you're not sure why you're doing them. So that's how we define it.
That's a great definition all the way around.
This is how we define crazy and stupid on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show. So I think in general, businesses and individuals are not out in the world trying to do a lot of things that do nothing, aka crazy, and also do things that weren't meant for them and don't drive results for them, which is stupid. So today we're going to talk about a little segment of all of the crazy stupidness that happens in the world. We can't talk about it, all of it, in one single episode, but luckily for you, there's lots of episodes. And if you'd like to check out the repository, you can check out Crazy Stupid Marketing Show on YouTube. That's it for the promos today. Usually I do those at the end, but it felt right to do them at the beginning today because we're talking about a conversation that, I'll be honest, when I was talking to Mark the other day, I'm like, this normally goes way over my head. And so we're here to have a conversation to bring some causal AI information down to us marketers so that we can understand what it is, we can understand its relationship to marketing, we can understand what it is, we can understand what it is not. And my wonderful friend Mark here knows much more about it than I do, which is why he's here as guest today. So if you, first of all, we're talking about causal AI in particular. There's lots of different types of AI. So if you are watching and you have questions about other types of AI, we may or may not answer the question in this conversation today because we are going to try and keep it kind of at least ecosystem connected to the concept of causal AI, which I mean, I guess kind of all AI is. But please feel free if there's like other AI questions to follow up with either Mark or myself directly, or some of the other fantastic AI experts that we have had here on the show. That being said, please ask your questions. I will have all of the questions because I always have all of the questions, but if you have questions, we want to bring your questions primarily into the conversation today. So if you do, and you are joining us live, please make sure to use that fancy comment functionality wherever you're watching to submit whatever questions you have, and we'll be super happy to bring them over into the conversation. That being said, Mark, before we jump into the conversation here today, would you like to give us all, it's funny because you actually just recently did a post on like your whole background and like how do all these things make sense? So you guys can go find that on LinkedIn if you want, but what's the quick background on who Mark is and why you kind of ended up in this causal AI arena?
Well, it's great to be here. My name is Mark Stouse. I'm the CEO of Proof, which is a causal AI platform company. Like pretty much most people I know, actually, my career winds through a bunch of different things, sometimes very different. And you wonder at the time, I wonder how all this is going to shake out in the end. What's it all going to mean? And looking back on it, it's a little clearer today, right? That I have always, whether I was involved in it directly or not, I was always really about causes and effects, right? Trying to figure out what really worked and how do I get more of that with less waste or destructive activity or whatever the
crazy and stupid.
Sorry.
Less
Yeah,
crazy.
right. Yeah, less stupidity. Um, and so, and that's something that afflicts us all. So when I say that, I'm in by no means taking some sort of superior position. Okay.
No, either.
In fact, the more you know, the more you realize not only what you don't know, but how stupid you were in the past. So I mean,
Sure.
it's a little, it's one of those. It's the only thing that's really unfortunate about it is that you find out a lot of times too late to make the past better than it, you know, So I was, part of my career was really, I ran large go-to-market operations inside of large companies as either a chief commercial officer or a CMO. And during those moments, there was a lot of pressure, just like there is with a lot of people listening to this, about proving your worth, proving your value. What are we getting for all of this money that we're spending? And particularly at HP, when Mark Hurd was CEO, he was a pretty tough dude, right? And so he finally called me into his office one day and said, guess what? You've got 6 months or so to figure this out. And I'm actually tasking you with a sub project, like a big project at HP to figure it out. And if you don't, you're gone. And if you do, it's going to be great.
No pressure though.
No pressure. And at least he gave me a bunch of data scientists and a bunch of money to kind of speed me on my way. Right. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, kind of really got into it. Mm-hmm. At that particular point in time, I was probably a marketer, or if you want to just kind of broaden it out, because my background is broader than just marketing. I was a business leader, like pretty much most of them, right? So I started working on it with my team. We made a lot of traction pretty fast because there was a lot of known art around it, and mathematically speaking. And so we were able to generate a fairly impressive roadmap for Hurd pretty fast. So needless to say, I didn't get fired, but soon after all of that, I did get a better job at a different company whose CEO was really intrigued by all this, and who I was there for 5 or 6 years, kind of gave me my head, so to speak, to pursue this liberally. And so by the time I left there in 2010 to become CMO of Honeywell Aerospace, it had matured a lot, right? And so, and Honeywell, being the company that is globally, and how complex it is and all that kind of stuff, was sort of like the ultimate. It wasn't even a proof of concept at that point, but it was an acid test deluxe, right? And so we got to the point where we could show our contribution to cash flow. We improved it by 5% over about an 18-20 month period. And that was the one that no one thought we could do. We improved profitability, deal margin by about 30%. And that was the one that was really important to Honeywell, because op income is pretty much their whole thing. And as far as more deals and leads and all that kind of stuff was concerned, that was where Honeywell kind of occupied a weird spot. And we did not do a lot of that kind of work because they were already doing business with everybody who there was to do business with, right? So it wasn't really about that. It was really, we got to the point where we had three kinds of campaigns. We had awareness, we had confidence, customer confidence producing campaigns, and customer trust. And those all related to more deals, bigger deals, faster time to close. And, so it was all linked up and it worked spectacularly. And so the biggest issue is it was costing a ton of money to produce all that globally.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of thought to ourselves, well, there's a real opportunity to automate big parts of this and softwareize it, right? And this was kind of pre the explosion of AI. So we were talking about SaaS at this point. And then Causal AI became kind of the next iteration of all this. Causal AI merges pattern match, which is what most people are thinking of when they think of Gen AI. That's pattern match, with causal inference math, which is a completely different kind of math that shows you really what's effective and ineffective, what's making things happen, and not just individually, point by point, but synergistically across time. So it captures time lag, which of course correlation and Gen AI can't do. There's a lot of things where they're very complementary with each other. And so that's what Proof is today. It's Causal AI platform. There are 4, probably soon to be 5 major types of AI. Everybody is familiar with Gen AI. That's pretty much like 98% of the understanding right now.
Your chat GPTs of the world.
Yeah, the chat GPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, you name it, right? You have analytical AI, which is similarly oriented towards machine learning, pattern match, that type of thing. Then you have causal AI, which is way different and complementary to the other two. And then you have autonomous, which a subset of autonomous is agentic, right? So you kind of have these basic areas, some of which are far more known than others.
Okay, so I want to start because you touched on a lot of data related things in your intro, and I think it's very common for marketers to call themselves data driven.
Yep.
So in your experience, what are some of the things that people who consider themselves data driven are doing but aren't necessarily like getting them the insights or helping them understand things synergistically, or some of the gaps, I guess I'll say, in being data driven, that can be supported by Causal AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Before I start with that answer, right, I want to re-emphasize the fact that I'm not suggesting that people are stupid who are doing this, right?
Just some things that people don't know.
Yeah,
to be
mistaken,
any
is not the same as being stupid.
Right. And also, I will tell you, because I use this with my son all the time. He tells me stupid is a swear word. He's 7, so to him it is. But what I always say to him is that people can do stupid things. That doesn't mean you're stupid.
That's correct.
And so we're talking about some of the things that we do or that we get caught up in doing because we're busy or someone assigned it to us and we didn't want to challenge the status quo, that really fall more so into the stupid category, yet they are still stupid. So if we don't show you that they are, then you can't fix doing them. Yes, I think we're not here to call any one person stupid. Yeah,
so I think, and I'm not going to hit them all here, but I'm going to try and get to the really big ones. Most people in go-to-market, and for that matter, most people in business functions, right, don't really understand the rules of the systems that they're operating in. And so data, for example, is always and only about the past. So why is that important? Well, past is not prologue, particularly these days, right?
Mhm.
And so if you are data driven, that is the equivalent of driving down the freeway at 80 miles an hour, right? Looking only in the rearview mirror, right?
Which I think most of us would consider not safe.
Which would be not safe.
Yeah.
And pretty much not effective.
Right.
Right. That's an example of what I'm talking about. We're also really not, I mean, I think that if you talk to most people, they are kind of aware conceptually of the issue of time lag in their professions, right? But what they don't know is that there's no way in hell that you can demonstrate your value without knowing the lags.
Right.
Well, why is that? Well, really simply, it's because you won't know where in the calendar to go look for the value. If you launch a new campaign and you start looking for the value the next week, you're not going to find it.
Right.
If you look at, as a result of a calculation, you look at 8 months later, you're going to see it. But if you don't know that it's 8 months later, you're going to think it failed.
Right.
So one of the things that happens a lot in different parts of a business, but particularly acute in marketing, right, is that campaigns or strategies or ideas or whatever, however you want to express it, get killed a lot sooner than they should. Because nobody's really looking at the lags. And everyone is thinking, mainly because this is what sales says a lot, is, hey, we're a month in to the quarter and it's not going well. We need maximum assistance from marketing to pull out the quarter.
Right.
Well, in most B2B companies, that is just a pure fiction.
Right.
That's not going to happen. Even if you were already set up with a campaign ready to go, okay, and you just pulled the pin on it the very next day, it's not going to have an effect in that quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it's just the whole thing is really, really wrong.
Right.
So there's just a lot of aspects of this. I can go on, right? But those are two really big ones. The third one, I would say a really big one, is people really underestimate the power of the stuff they don't control on what they do control. So like marketplace externalities, everything from corporate reputation to competitor actions to cost of money, interest rates to, all kinds of stuff, whatever's relevant in your business, right? To be a headwind or a tailwind on your efforts is really important. Well, how important? Well, would you believe that it makes up about 70 to 80% of the overall reality? That means you're controlling 20 to 30. So this is the wave you are seeking to surf. And you don't control the wave.
Right.
You only control how your actions, how well they mesh with what the wave is doing. And that's exactly what most businesses like, right? Yeah. And so that's all these three things are like super, super mega important. And yet most people don't even acknowledge them.
And I think, like, would you say, you use the example of a wave. I often use the example of the wind, right? Like, I don't control the wind, but if I have a sail, I can adjust my sail with
That's
the
right.
wind. It doesn't mean I control the wind. Because that's such a big component, do you think people just get either like afraid to look at it because it feels too big, or they're just like, I don't even know how to look at this, so I guess I can't?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you also have to kind of look at whether it's the mathematics or the tech that kind of embodies and delivers the math, right? You have to look at this as part of a natural progression of capability and capacity, right? So, 30, 40 years ago, wasn't a lot of ways to do this in some sort of readily operationalizable way, right? So what did people do? They took what was an open system known as real life in their area, and they declared it closed. So we're going to draw a big circle around what we're going to consider in our model, right? And we're only going to focus on that. So that's where things like A/B testing and things like comes from. This is where actuarial science in the insurance business comes from. This is also, ironically enough, the basis of the logic behind the desire to take Gen AI as the path to artificial general intelligence, AGI. The whole idea being that if we can just scale data and compute enough, this closed loop circle will envelop the open system that is real life. And all of a sudden, we will be able to say, contrary to what we've always been saying, that correlation does imply causality. But the problem is that that system doesn't account for all these other variables that we've been just talking about right here. So it's really kind of like an example of how you can be really, really smart and be wrong. You get blinded by bias and money and all this other kind of stuff, right? You start pushing for something that's not even real. So I would say that the rules on this have been changing for quite some time, very incrementally. But something happened about 3 years ago in the United States and in other countries, in the EU, the UK, the PRC, where the rules around something called fiduciary duty got a significant revision and upgrade. And basically the bottom line is today is that they spread the accountability out to all corporate officers, not just the board and the CEO. And they lowered the threshold for breach, meaning where you screwed up, dramatically, right? And there's no way that you can actually comply with these new regulations without using causal AI. It's just not possible. So what's the driver in real life? Well, the driver is, and it's been about 2.5 years since all that was passed in different countries. So that's about the amount of time it takes to kind of filter through people's minds and into the systems. And so what we're seeing right now is a huge escalation in the number of shareholder lawsuits against companies targeting this kind of stuff. So the real hot one right now, this should give everybody kind of a mild freak out, but it's not just about marketing or sales, it's across the board, is lawyers have figured out that it's a slam dunk settlement to go after data quality in these companies. And so most of the lawsuits are about data quality. And the sales team, I mean, I've been doing this in tech for a long time. CRM data quality is a meme. Okay, it's so bad. Okay?
Well, I'm not going to start a rant on CRM.
Yeah, so that's where they start, and then they just keep going. After that, they make a recent CRM data quality lawsuit in California settled for almost $40 million, right? I mean, that's a lot of money, particularly when, so the same company now has 5 other lawsuits against it for data quality in other areas of the company. So they're really maximizing this whole issue.
Right.
And the lawsuits don't just name the company, they name the corporate officers in charge of the data. So the CRM case, it named the CRO because he or she's in charge of the people and the rules. Okay. The CDO, because that person is in charge of the data, right? And the CIO, who owns the systems, the plumbing, and the tech, right? And so you're now personally liable. Now your company, your employer, usually has covered your liability in a insurance policy, right? But the reputational hit is huge.
So let's talk about this though from a small business point of view, because I can feel like lawyers get all this, they want to go after big companies because they can get a big settlement.
Yep.
Smaller companies might hear that and be like, my risk is low because I'm not a big.
Well, the only way that it's really low is if it's a single proprietor company. Right. If there's one owner and it's like I'm accountable to me and me only, then the risk is low.
Okay.
If you have any kind of shareholders, though, your risk is not low. The total amount of money might be lower, right? But as a percentage of your revenue, it's probably still really large.
Right.
And this is why even small companies have E&O, errors and omissions insurance, right? So, because they can just be wiped out basically by one of these lawsuits because they're so small.
Okay, so let's talk about quality of data, because I think a lot of people think about collecting data, but they don't necessarily think about the quality of data. Or one of the things I was having a conversation with someone about the other day was when you do market research, how you tend to get the extremes, where you get people who are really happy, you get people who are really not happy. It's very unusual to get like a 3 out of 5, because those people are indifferent to you and probably didn't fill out your survey. So there's a lot of different stuff that can happen from a data point of view. So what's some things that we can do to keep ourselves safe in terms of,
I think
in terms of data quality?
So I think that one of the most important parts about this is to realize that there is a triangle called people, process, technology, but it is not an equilateral triangle, meaning the 3 sides are not the same. It is deeply scalene, okay, which means that all 3 sides are of different lengths. And the longest one in this case, by far, is people, right? So people, when there's a success with technology and process, it's mainly due to the people, right? The capabilities, the capacities, and the commitment of the people.
Yeah.
If there's failure, same thing is true. Blame it on the people. Now, we don't like to hear that because we like the upside, not the downside. Okay. Right. But if we're going to say, hey, in the end, right, AI has to augment us, not replace us, then it's up to us to prove that we're better with AI than AI is by itself. Right. So it's the same thing here. So I would say that your first question was really on point here when you said, well, how do I know that I'm data driven? Well, do you have good data? Do you prioritize good data? Do you realize that data is your lifeblood?
Well, so let's talk about it. Like, I know it's going to be a little bit different for every company and every industry, but like, what is good data? Like if we're looking at
So,
our data
the whole
today, how do
point,
we know if
yeah.
it's good or bad?
So the whole point, well, I think it's the easiest way to answer it is this, right? The whole point here of measurement and analytics, which is what you do with the data, okay, is to accurately represent as close as you possibly can something that happened in real life. That's it, right?
Yeah.
So if your data doesn't represent what happened in real life in the past, then it's bad data.
Right.
Period. Now, one of the most candid answers that I got, this is now a couple, 3 years ago, but was from a marketing team who said that they were data driven. And I said, great, then that means we can just accelerate big time on the analytics, right? Because you can produce all the data. And they were like, I'm like, well, then you're not really data driven. But I said, the other part is that you got to really understand why you're not data driven. Like, what the hell, right? And there was kind of like this commiseration on the other side. And then they finally said, well, it's not very much fun. Okay. Which is true. Just so we're all clear. Okay. That kind of job is done by a very specific kind of person, who kind of really revels in that kind of activity. And that is not the person you necessarily want to be developing your marketing strategy, right? Or doing your creative would probably be better, right? But you still got to take it seriously. Even if you don't want to do it, you've got to make sure, you've got to pay somebody to make sure that it happens and that it's correct. By the way, this goes 5 to 10x for sales teams. Like if anybody really hates maintaining data, it's sales guys.
Yeah, they hate it way more than marketers, in my experience.
Way more. And yet they spend a lot more time manipulating their entries into the CRM so that they maybe get paid a little bit more on the deal, right? So they are more directly incented, not necessarily to get it right, but to get it specific, right? But marketers are kind of disincented historically, right? Because they're not doing anything with the data that would alter what is going to happen in the future, what they're going to do in the future, because they don't use it that way. So I think that, that's the other way of looking at it, is that if your data fed into analytics isn't teaching you something new every week or every month and making you change what you're doing in the marketplace as a result, particularly these days where it's very volatile and the change is very high velocity change, right? If you're not changing your stuff, if you're just running the same framework over and over and over again, you're screwed.
I think like something that came up for me as you said that was the activity of using data to prove something versus using data to learn something that we can then use in the future. Because when I look at every time I think of A/B testing, I still think of people just like testing email subject lines and being like, okay, so here's the data. This many more people opened that one. So we prove that is better than that. But there's many more hypotheses that.
Well, I was commissioned to, or Proof was commissioned. I had to be writing it, right? So it's a white paper, a really large white paper for a client, big company, that's all about what does marketing and sales and product and customer success. So those being the kind of the classic 4 horsemen of go to market, right? What do they have to unlearn over the next 2 to 3 years.
This sounds like a white paper I want to read.
And it's like this would give massive heartburn to a lot of people because we are in a time right now of such volatility, so much change that it nullifies your expertise. Like if you've done this for 30 years or 20 years, okay, maybe a third of it is going to survive. And if you're not actively involved in figuring out what you should keep and what you should ditch, you will wake up one day and everybody be looking at you like you're like in the Stone Age.
I was going to say, this makes me think of like, I go to the Royal Tyrrell Dinosaur Museum, is right close to me, and they have all these like extinction events throughout history, right? And I'm like, this sounds like extinction event.
It is an extinction event, and I don't rejoice in it at all. I mean, actually, the whole reason why, for me personally, that I got into this and created Proof was that it had been so successful for me and for my teams that I wanted to spread the gospel, so to speak, right? And one of the hardest things, right, was to realize that, at least for the first, say, 5 years, right, that a lot of people didn't want to listen, weren't interested, right? And so when you know that what you're saying is real and true and factually based, right, and you get that reaction, you have to kind of be, I think, a different kind of person. I don't know how special you have to be, but you definitely have to be different in order to persevere. And so what is the big takeaway there? The big takeaway is that out of everything that I can talk about in terms of what produces success or not, timing, the most important thing. And yet it is the one thing that we can only analyze in retrospect. You can't forecast the timing, right? And this is why some startups appear to just magically take off and hit billions of dollars in valuation very quickly and all that kind of stuff, right? It's because they were in the right place at the right time. Through no credit for that is due to anyone there because they didn't know.
Well, and I think like this is something that I think again, when we say it, like people kind of get it, but then the behavior doesn't necessarily match that. So
no, that's
there's
true.
So much like chasing that people are doing. How do I like chase the timing? Or all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of investors investing in AI. So now I should build an AI startup. Well, they're investing in AI already, right? You missed the boat. And then by the time half of those companies are looking for investment, people are being more conservative with their investments because they've been bitten in the butt by a bunch of things. And so, like, I really want to talk about like changing the direction from looking in our rearview mirror to looking forward and really like leading wherever we're trying to go with our data analytics and how we might transfer that into Causal AI. So if we want to take a rear view mirror view and flip that around into, okay, now we're just going to say, okay, we're done with that. That didn't work for us. Now we want to look forward.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I would say that in that respect, and in fact, it's not just an analogy to help people understand causal AI. It's largely the same math. That's where causal AI is a GPS, right? So if you think about the GPS on your phone, right? You can say, I want to go to this place by this time, and it will show you how to get there. It'll give you several choices, and you pick one, and you're going down that path, right? And then all of a sudden, stuff happens. Car accident, sudden traffic pile up, whatever, right? And all of a sudden, what was the good path to your destination no longer is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it tells you to reroute.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what causal AI does. Okay. It's tracking everything that you control, everything that you don't control that's material to your business. It's showing you constantly because it updates as fast as it needs to serve your business.
Mm-hmm.
And it will show you, okay, this is no longer working anymore, or the impact is slowing way down, right? It's being eroded in some way. So then you can war game how you're going to reroute yourself in that respect, right there on the same screen, and make a choice and operationalize the choice.
Right.
And that is a combination of the technology, the math, but it's also the decisions itself. The implementation decisions are entirely human.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought that was really super important.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, it's still the people who are executing. So
Right.
And I think like Darren made a comment a while ago back in the show about channels as well. And I know everyone who's in marketing talks about channels. But I think this is a really interesting thing too, because I feel like on an ongoing basis, there are more and more channels becoming available from a marketing point of view, which in your GPS example is kind of like there's more and more paths that you could take.
Just the reality of what's going on in the world means that just because a particular channel is working for you right now does not mean that in 6 months it's going to be worth a damn for you, right?
Yeah. And so to me, this comes back to, I love the GPS example because without a destination, none of this information is helpful. And then you mentioned about operationalizing the switch, right? So if we were saying like, well, we were taking this path, but now Deerfoot is closed, so can't take that road. So we're going to go this way, and we're all deciding to go this way. We're operationalizing everything towards that, but our destination didn't change. I'm still going to that place I said I was going to. I just have to get there a different way because that way didn't work. So in all of this data-drivenness, how often would you say that the destination has actually been like committed to?
That's a great question. I think that increasingly what we see happening is that number one, finance is playing a much bigger role. And so it is saying to go-to-market teams, these are your goals, right? Figure it out how you're going to attain those goals. Okay. And if you don't, then we're going to have another kind of conversation that probably won't be fun for anybody. Right. So I would say that one of the big issues historically, particularly in B2B, is that the goals have all been quarterly, short-term quarterly goals, right? And I mean, some of that is necessary, right? But most of what marketing does transcends the quarter in which it was launched, right? So this is actually one of the reasons why FASB, which is the big accounting organization, is starting to really consider changing the way that marketing is classified, or at least partly so, from OpEx to CapEx, because the definition of CapEx is if the money you spent persists, the value persists through multiple quarters and even years, that's CapEx.
Right.
And now that we can really prove that with different parts of marketing, including campaigns, which are traditionally OpEx treated, that's a game changer. And so there's just a whole bunch going on here that's being largely revealed by causality. Let's just call it that, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that's kind of interesting about this is that B2C, particularly consumer packaged goods, hospitality and hotels, all that kind of stuff, have been using causal inference math for a long time, right? A lot of times it's been known as marketing mix modeling, or it has various names, econometric analysis. And there's some fine points that kind of separate out different approaches, but they've been really aware of their need for this for a long time, 30, 40 years. Les Binet, he's a very famous British econometrician who wrote a lot of books. He's very famous in the advertising business. He really championed this. I mean, it's gospel in that whole thing. Why that never translated over to B2B is sort of a giant mystery. A lot of it seems to be that B2B, starting with the VCs and the founders and trickling down into functions, B2B felt like that it was not under the same set of rules as B2C, that it was just different. And they could ignore stuff like that. And they also, because of the VCs in particular, tended to think about go-to-market as a deterministic machine, meaning we're going to organize and calibrate this so tightly every quarter that we'll be able to say we spent $10 million this quarter and we got $100 million back.
Right.
Every time, just like a slot machine. Right? That is just not real.
Right. Well, I was going to say, even if you're thinking about a slot machine, like, that's not real. That's what we're sold.
Yeah.
You will win if you put
another
in enough
example
money.
of how really, really, really smart people, okay, can make really stupid decisions, right? And so what they're starting to realize today is that no, actually, anytime most of your data is human behavior data, that is an intensely probabilistic exercise. And so you're having to calibrate it very differently than the way that they have been trying to do it for the past 25 years. And so there's a lot of things that are kind of coming unwound right now. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are choosing not to see it. Right. And those are the people who their careers will be extinct.
Yeah. Right. And I think this is I feel like it does always go in this path, right? Like you get the quote unquote early adopters who are like, oh, yes, this makes sense. Let's make that change. Let's go do the thing. And then all of a sudden they're performing light years above all their competitors. And then their competitors are like, what did those guys do? Because maybe we should do that. And then you have the laggards, but if you're in the laggard group, there's always people who get. So
so you're really talking about like a framework mentality, a so-called best practices mentality. Yes. The problem is that if you don't calibrate that framework or those best practices for what's working in the marketplace at that moment in time, it's useless.
True.
Right? There's that old saying about even the broken clock is right twice a day. Okay. Even the framework is going to be occasionally correct as you're implementing it, but not enough, not consistently enough for you to win.
Right.
And so this is where it's getting really interesting right now, because it's more and more obvious that things are not working. So like we've been tracking it since pre-COVID. Before COVID, about, so this is a combined go-to-market number. So this is not just any one of them, right? On a combined basis, go-to-market waste was around 20, 25%, which is a lot of money when you stop and think about it, okay?
Yeah.
But it has gradually gone up and up and up and up and up, right? So what is it as of last month? Because we're getting ready to issue the report for 2025. So we're going to update it a couple more times, right? But it's more than half.
Oh,
Okay.
that's a lot.
More than half. And I'm here to tell you that finance is not pleased with that.
No.
Nor should they be.
No.
And
Nor should we be fine with that either.
Yeah, and no, even the people that, I mean, if you've got a CMO or a CRO or somebody like that that's okay with that, right? You've got the wrong person.
So, like, how many of these people, because I feel like, again, now we're into like the human behavior and the ego side of this, but how many of those people are looking at that and being like, well, that's not me, right? Like, that's other
no, that's
they
actually,
have 50%. I don't have 50% waste. I don't actually know the data, but I for sure don't have 50% waste.
So
because I will tell you, most of the companies that I have worked for, more than 50% waste. Just in marketing, and probably more in sales.
Oh, it is actually disproportionate, right?
Yeah.
So this is the relationship. We're now talking about the relationship between effectiveness and efficiency, right? So marketing is a nonlinear multiplier of sales performance. Mm-hmm. And the way we know that is the standard output on causal AI models is the multiplier for each component, right? And so 5-6 years ago, marketing made, in the average, like mid-market, $100 million plus kind of company, right? Marketing made sales about 8 times more effective than it would be all by itself, and about 5 times more efficient. That's now been cut in half. Mm-hmm. But the biggest part of the waste remains, and this is almost like an essential part of the dynamic itself, is on the sales side. And all you have to do is look at the number of companies that miss their revenue targets, where
quarter over quarter.
And where deal velocity keeps slowing and average deal size keeps shrinking. And why is that? Okay, well, it's because everybody on the customer side is afraid. So they want to make progress, they want to step forward, but they're going to take longer, right, to reassure themselves that this is the right thing to do. And they're going to bite off something that's smaller and more manageable, so that if it goes sideways, maybe the failure of it will just kind of float down the river and nobody will notice, right? It's a big issue, okay? And so a lot of people say, well, how would you spend, if you were CMO in a large company now, how would you spend your money? I would do almost everything I could to build customer confidence, customer trust, and customer awareness, right? I would not over-rotate on demand gen, marketing automation, all that kind of stuff. The idea that we can use AI to be even more personalized and hammer people even harder with marketing automation is, pardon my French, really fucked. Okay?
Agree.
And the reason why is that that's not what your customers want from you. In fact, their companies are actively deploying AI-powered countermeasures to filter all that stuff out. right? And it's not just a cybersecurity concern. The main thing that they discovered during COVID was how much time their average employees spent buying stuff.
Mm.
And if they're buying it, that means they're not doing anything to sell the company's stuff.
Right.
Right. And so they want a lot less buying going on.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's just, I think it's getting very uncomfortable and totally contrary to what a lot of marketers and salespeople think should happen. But the reality is that they're going to be alone on a raft if they don't kind of make some changes.
And I think I love that you brought it back to the customer confidence, trust, and awareness, because you started there. And
yeah,
for me, from a marketing point of view, like if we are not doing that, even if we want to think about a like tactic or campaign as lead generating, and we are not thinking about the concepts of awareness, confidence, and trust, and how we do that as a company, we're just doing stuff like this. These are the spaces where waste gets generated. And then all of a sudden we get into the habit of generating waste. And then if we don't stop and think about it, we generate more waste and more waste and more waste. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're in a manure field that is full of poop and no clients.
No, the entire premise of performance marketing and all the systems that have grown up around it, right, was for marketing to figure out a way to actively contribute to revenue, particularly revenue, but also margin, right? Mm-hmm. But the entire premise of how that happens, the whole premise of shared revenue credit, okay, is BS. So, I mean, it's literally not the way it works, and we can prove it. So anybody who wants to debate me on this, let's go. Right?
Unfortunately, folks, we don't have time for that.
No, I'm just saying.
But reach out to me and debate. Yeah. Well, hopefully you're like, okay, I get it. But if you want to debate it, highly encourage a debate with Mark.
Yeah, no, it's not that I'm so smart. It's that I've been doing it for so long. You kind of be bringing a knife to a gunfight, right? So, I mean, I'm just saying it's real that the appetite for change in this whole situation is a must. Because the outside is forcing it on us. Mm-hmm. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. And I think this is really interesting, because this is where I think the wins and losses are going to come, is that the people who do have this appetite for change will be looking at these types of things, and they'll be questioning what used to work but doesn't work anymore, and they will be able to evolve into the future of their business. And if we get too stuck in what we always did, and especially, and I mean, like, I still think there's a lot of people systems that support that, right? We always tracked how many sales calls people made. We always tracked all of these numbers, which don't mean anything anymore. Maybe they used to, maybe they didn't originally mean anything either.
They really didn't.
But so if we look at what means something, and we give ourselves the space to just let go of all that stuff that we were holding on to that is generating the waste, because our destination is to not generate waste.
Well, so I would just pose this question.
Okay. Last question.
I want to know, okay, because I'm not aware of it, and I've interviewed about 550 Fortune 2000 CEOs and CFOs, okay? I'm not aware of a single example where the approach of the last 25 to 30 years is seen as successful. And so the more tightly marketing and sales hold on to legacy approaches, I don't think they're aware of the signal that that is sending to the C-suite. I mean, it's bad.
Yeah, and let's not even talk about the signal it's sending to your customers.
Well, so you do have to say this, okay? Who is your customer? Well, you can have quite a few, right?
Yeah.
But the definition of a customer fundamentally is where there's an exchange of value, right? You're doing something and they're giving you money. Okay. So your CEO, your C-suite, your CFO, all these people are your customer. They're paying you. They're incurring a debt with shareholders that they are it's really important that you repay that debt profitably, right? Because that's how they give you your budget.
Yep.
And so when you don't, the shareholders don't really get mad at you in marketing or sales or whatever, right? They get mad at the guys at the top.
Right.
And that's where people got to really see that there's a quid pro quo here. Right?
Yeah. And it's funny. I've had a lot of conversations lately about just the concept of collaboration and like looking at nonprofits and how they relate to each other and how we relate from a C-suite into departments, right? Like these are collaborations.
Yes, very much.
If we are not working together to again go somewhere and we all know where we're going,
Right.
then we can't collaborate. The collaboration.
Well, the reason why that's so important, okay, is that go-to-market's value creation is synergistic.
Yeah.
It's not function by function, line by line. Okay. Right. It's all of this.
Yeah.
Right. And so particularly across time, the synergies are what's really powerful.
Right.
So if you're not able to account for that, you're in rough terms, you're not delivering 2/3 of your value or evidence of 2/3 of your value. And so you look a lot less valuable than you really are. So one of the things I really think is important here to talk about briefly is people's fear. So a lot of people are scared to death of things like causal AI because it is kind of the ultimate truth teller.
Right.
So they're afraid that all of a sudden they're going to look like they're stupid and they didn't know what they were doing, and that 80-90% of their spend has been a waste for like the last 10 years. And and just speaking candidly and through the reality of humanness, if that was true in most cases, we would not have much of a business, because that's a very tough sell.
True.
Okay. The reality is that we sit down, we talk to finance, and finance understands exactly what we do. And you can see kind of this little gleam in their eyes, right? Because they're all thinking, we are finally going to bust them, right? Because they're thinking that the waste is probably way above what it really is. And the marketers are and the salespeople are kind of scared, because in their entire career, particularly in marketing, they've never seen any real evidence of their value at all.
Right.
That was incontrovertible, right? And so they're kind of like, oh my God, what's it gonna say? And then all of a sudden the first models come out and everybody's a little bit nonplussed. So the marketers are all lighting up cigars and saying, yeah, you know what? We just didn't know, but we did pretty good for not knowing.
Yeah.
Right. And the finance guys are going, well, crap, we thought we were getting ready to claw back 80% of the marketing spend or, whatever, and can't do that. And that shows you right there how far apart these two groups are.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's really important that they collaborate.
Yeah.
And so this has sort of become a point of collaboration. I mean, if you stop and think about it as a CMO, so let's just say that a third of your marketing spend is wasted.
Mm.
Wouldn't you like to have that back?
Yes.
Wouldn't you love to be able to say, okay, that's gone, right? Because, cutting it is something you can do pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a point at which you have almost zero waste.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start reinvesting it into other things, but life changes and moves on and all this kind of stuff. And Causal AI is all about helping you stay calibrated so that you avoid those big pockets of waste going forward. But you make a ton of money, okay, up front in this exercise. I mean, if you're in that scenario, let's keep the company kind of small, okay? If you're spending $3 million and all of a sudden a third of that, 1 million, is waste, you are able to kill it off and reclaim it and reinvest it. Don't you think that's going to be really significant? It's going to be very significantly positive,
Mm-hmm.
right? The cut in the waste is good,
Mm-hmm.
but being able to plow all that money into stuff that we know now works for you is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it starts to really drive the business.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what it comes down to in a nutshell, right there.
Yeah. And again, like when I think about that, I'm like, I would just like to know, first of all, if the way I'm spending all my money is very effective, then good job me. I have good fodder for any.
Yeah. And my fees will go up next year.
Right. And if it's not, then I can like immediately cut and save the money. I can redistribute the money. Like I can make immediate decisions. If I'm thinking about being data driven, like that is the type of thing that I would want to know.
Yeah, and I would even say that a better way of saying it, because it's really you should be oriented towards the future, not the past.
Right.
Okay. So be analytics led. Don't be data driven. That means you're driven by the past and you're driven. You shouldn't be driven. You should be led by the opportunities in the future and what those statistically could mean, right? That's really what it's all about.
Well, you heard it here first, folks, or probably not if you've talked to Mark before, but this is an opportunity for us to be analytics led and look for those future opportunities instead of just harping on the past, which I think most of us know at this point is not going to turn into success for the future. Mark, I could talk to you a very long time about a great many things, but we're going to leave it at that for today. Where is the best place for people to find you if they would like to continue the conversation about Causal AI?
Oh, definitely LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and sending me a LinkedIn messenger type of thing, is far better than email.
All right. Mark and I are the same on that. So connect with Mark on LinkedIn if you would like to continue the conversation. I want to thank Darren for getting into the conversation in the chat today. Thank you, my friend. It's great to see you. And until next time, everybody, permission to do you. Bye-bye.
See you.